Ethan, welcome to the Queer Divorce Club.
Thank you. I'm a proud member, proud to be a divorcee.
Yay. I love I love adding new members and finding new members because there's so many of us that are just like hiding in the shadows, I guess.
Totally, totally.
Totally. Can you give us a little background on your history with divorce and
Yeah,
gay divorce in general, I guess?
yeah, totally. Well, I got divorced from my ex-husband in 2016, so a little while ago now. We had been married in 2008. I like joke that I was a child bride at our wedding. Like it was, but I was like 22. It was right out of college. It was like literally like 2 weeks after I graduated college. Um, a lot of, you know, now, some of those conditions of how the relationship started really sort of announced themselves as some of the flags for how the relationship ended too. It was like this, like I was, finishing college, had sort of no idea how to make a life. Here was this person promising some kind of stability inside of that, and like, really couldn't see the outside of that, or like really like see what, sort of individuate and be like, what am I doing? Like I was wanting to be an artist. There was no frame for that, no world for that. And so then here was this like relationship that
Mm-hmm.
could create the ground or something, so like whatever. But yeah, we were married really young. And then yeah, divorced 2016. And no, I think like, I mean, I'm like really excited to be on this podcast and to like hear about this podcast in general. And that's because like, I was like gay married early in the possibility of gay marriage, like
Mm-hmm.
and so then also gay divorced early-ish in the like realm of that relation happening, like that, like
Mm-hmm.
both the institution of marriage and the dissolution of marriage, like for queer people was like all sort of new. And so like, whatever, I was like inside the marriage, we were in this like sort of chaotic polyamorous open marriage the whole time. I was like always having a complicated relationship to marriage itself, like had a critique of marriage as a conservative institution, but I was in it, it was all this like, I'm married, I'm not, whatever, like stuff inside of it. But then when divorce happened, and like when I wanted to get out of the relationship and end it, the marriage became really real, and I like really like, and divorce became actually like a really hard thing to achieve, like, and so, and in that moment I was like, whoa, I have no, I haven't had models for marriage, but I really don't have models for divorce within queer community, like, and I don't know anybody who has, like, so it's really nice that you're doing the podcast. Like if only I had
Yeah.
a podcast to listen to, what, however many years ago that is now, 7 years ago, like to like, um, yeah, because it felt really isolating too. I was like, yeah, or like, divorces already can be a sort of isolating thing, but it was also just like symbolically isolating. I wasn't like, yeah, there's all these narratives of like what it means to get divorced as a queer person. And it was like, no. And so I ended up, yeah, like really showing up more in like straight people narratives about divorce, and that was helpful. That's where I could find it, and
Mm-hmm.
I felt like a lot of actually overlap with those, like, but this relationship that had felt so queer, so different inside of it, then the divorce, I was like, oh no, I'm like, we're like a straight couple getting divorced right now,
Yeah, you're like regular married when you have to actually legally get divorced. I know
right,
it's wild.
right,
It's
totally.
wild. Do you feel like since then there's been more people getting divorced or your community's grown at all? Like how has that shifted for you over the last 7 years?
Yeah, well, I mean, I often joke that I like divorcees are my like favorite people. Like I do feel like an immediate like sort of like, hey, like, yeah, we like did a thing that we really needed to end, and we like figured out how to like decide to end something,
Mm-hmm.
for our we like chose our flourishing in some way or figured it out, you know, and like got out of something. And so I love divorcees in general. So I like meet them a lot. And I like find the divorcees. But yeah, and then I think like, I mean, this is maybe jumping forward a little bit, but like my desire to make this sort of online performance series of songs with and form a band called the Gay Divorcees during the pandemic, you know, during the beginning moments of the pandemic that, you know, continues in its own ways. But my impulse to do that was to like, I wanted to like build community around queer experiences of queer divorce. Like it was like this thing that I was doing and, you know, talking to friends about, you know, like, and, you know, living out, but like I wasn't having a lot of like shared experiences of some of these really weird things of like early years of gay marriage and divorce, you know, like so I decided to make this piece and form this band out of that desire for community. So post, you know, like, and this was all in fall of 2020, you know, so it was like, you know, the conditions of the pandemic had gotten normalized a little bit, but they were like also still super intense. So it was all remote, all this stuff. But we like had this, like, I like gathered this new community of queer divorcees to talk and make songs. Yeah.
Do you think that so was everybody in the band has been divorced, or everybody that in the
the constraint for me reaching out to people to see if they wanted to join this band was like, the requirements were like that you had some relationship to art making already, you know, you have some like sort of creative practice already, didn't have to be music. In fact, it was sort of fun if you were also like an amateur inside of music, but and pretty much everybody in it like had some relationship to like, you know, writing a song or something, but not necessarily professionalized or whatever. So like some kind of creative practice, maybe some musical leanings. And then then the requirement was that you had to, at the moment of engaging in marriage, that was like made possible by the passing of gay marriage, you know, like the legalization of gay marriage. So it was like people's then relationships to the category of like gay marriage, you know, like was more complicated, like because like these relationships then also like, you know, like people's own relationships to gendered identity became that like what was once gay marriage was then also straight marriage, you know, like it's like it was not like because of people's like experience of transness and how the state recognizes, you know, like what was a gay and what was a straight marriage or whatever, you know, like so but the thing was that like when you got married, it was like made possible because of like so-called legalization of gay marriage, and you got legally divorced at some point, so that was the requirement. And so I just like, and it came about, I was just sort of like, I got this, the idea for the piece didn't actually totally come from me. It was this art institution, the Skirball Center at that's housed at NYU in New York. The curator there, this guy named Jay Wegman, found out I was working with me on this other musical piece that I was writing, found out that I was a divorcee and got super into that. Oh, like, what is that? You know, he's like a cis gay guy of like just like a little bit older than me, you know, but like the little micro generational difference was like, was really like, whoa, what does it mean to be a queer divorcee? And was super into it. It was like, I want a piece about this. And I think he was imagining some kind of first person narrative, like tell all theatrical piece, maybe with music about my experience. And I was like, not so into that. I was like, I don't want to like just like do this sort of confessional narrative about it. Also, I think he had this like understanding that'd be sort of like funny maybe. And for me, my like a lot of like the hijinks of my marriage were funny, but the divorce wasn't funny. It was a lot of like just reckoning with like the traumatic experiences inside the relationship, reckoning with like all the like really awful shit that went down in the process of getting out of the relationship, you know, like just like
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't like a like cute funny conceptual piece for me. It was like just like real hard experiences. So
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to do that. But he like still had this commission money for me. And I was like, I need money. So like, what can I do? And so then this idea of like, no, I don't want to just like tell my story because it's like it's still ongoing. It sucks, you know, like whatever. But I do want like to be able to spend time with other queer divorcees and like share stories, get to know each other, you know, like really be together and maybe like do some shit together. So that's how the project was born. I like had this lump of cash from an institution. It was initially, which I got the winter of 2020. It was initially going to be like a big live performance, and then the pandemic happened, and we still had the money. So I was like, we're all at home, like let's still do something. And so we
Yeah.
started gathering remotely, regularly, and I sort of devised this process for us where we would like share, talk, and then like mirror back for each other things we had said and like find little like images or language or emotional states or little like weird genre play things or something that were like coming up in the conversations. And then I'd be like, okay, next week we're gonna get together again. Everybody like bring in a melody
Mm-hmm.
from somebody else's conversation. Or, you know, like we would start to like bring in little bits of songs um and then slowly that like built into these songs, you know, and we like
Mm-hmm.
started and we like
Yeah.
became.
Yeah, I am so intrigued by the way this came together. I mean, I think I'm not surprised as a queer divorcee myself, like understanding the cultural difference around what it's like to be divorced and queer and how that works in our world. And so coming together in a community makes so much sense. So I'm seeing that in the work that you did. I'm also so intrigued by how you mentioned that the person that funded your project was also a gay man. Is that
Yeah.
correct? And but
Yeah.
he didn't understand the idea of gay divorce. Was he, what's the culture shift between like the, I don't know, my kids would say the OG gays and
Right.
and the new culture of like being able to legally get divorced versus,
Yeah.
yeah, what's the difference there?
Well, I think there's like, I don't know. I feel like it's like he understood it, but um was just sort of like thought the whole thing was like salacious and fun.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the whole thing was sort of like held more lightly or something. And and for me it was like um yeah, it was like it's yeah, there's like lots of stuff there, but it's not
Yeah.
like me or something, you know. But I think like, but the like some of the culture shift stuff, I was like, hmm. Well, yeah, there's this really complicated, like really condensed timeline around the normalization of like queer intimacy within the eyes of the state, like and like sort of queer assimilationist politics of the 90s and early 2000s. Like it's just actually so condensed, you know, like so the like the sort of move from like, you know, early 90s queer politics to like, you know, early 2000s, like, you know, where the like big issue for like mainstream national level gay stuff suddenly became just legal recognition of marriage, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
that is like it's actually so fast and and sort of like yeah, like vertigo inducing how much change quickly around on a lot of different levels too. Like it's both the like emergence of like an assimilation focused national gay politics movement that was not like we want to like change how intimacy works. It's like no, we want to like get recognition for gay marriage, you know, like that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So there's all this generational like sort of like whiplash around that, I feel like. um that goes in a lot of directions. There's like older radical queers who are like, why did you ever even want marriage,
Yeah.
Like, so then they are sort of like funny about divorce too. They're like, what were you even doing getting married? Like,
Mm-hmm.
didn't you know this whole institution was bankrupt? And then there are more like sort of mainstream older queers that are like, we fought for marriage. How dare you fuck it up and get divorced?
Right. Right.
Like this was what we fought for. Don't you just want it, or something? And like, so from both directions, it's sort of a weird experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so then there was, for people in the project, we were like all sort of like, yeah, like in our 30s-ish, I think that's true. Yeah, like sort of maybe like late 20s to early 40s. And so I think we like had this sort of, it was also this specific generational experience of like gay, like as we were coming into adulthood, gay marriage was legalized in the States and or in some states or whatever. That was like on the,
Mm-hmm.
in the culture that was happening. And we had like, so it was like sort of an option bureaucratically and inside of our own fantasies about what it meant to be in a relationship, like it was there.
Mm-hmm.
And we could have our weird, complicated relationship. Like lots of people on the project were ambivalent about marriage when they got married. We're like, like, oh, I get it. I'm sort of like selling out into heteronormativity or whatever, but like, I want it or something. Like there was a lot of that within the project, people who had that experience. Um, but then, did it either for like immigration stuff, like a bunch of people in the project, it was also like in relation to citizenship, and
Mm-hmm.
like, or in relation to like getting some more love from their parents, like, or
Mm-hmm.
support for their relationship, for their parent, it was like, it was about compromises already for a lot of people. But then, like the sort of moment of needing to leave the relationship was like where those like compromises became really explicit. And it was like, I actually need to get out of this. So I don't know, there was a moment we did like after the project got online, and these songs started circulating over the toll-free number in winter of 2021, February, like Valentine's Day 2021. We had this little like online panel of a bunch of like queer theorists like responding to the project and thinking about some of these things about like what is queer divorce, what is this like sort of, yeah, like what is the idea of gay marriage this long in, stuff like that. And there's a really wonderful queer theorist named Elizabeth Freeman who in that event had this sort of like sort of spicy moment where she was like, this whole project is like a bunch of young queers with starter marriages or something. She's like, this, like, none of you have kids or property. So like this whole relation to divorce, I don't even know. Like, and she's like a divorcee herself. And so was really who, when in her marriage had a kid, also purchase property, like, and so then was in the like more difficult property parent co-parenting, like divorce that like has to be then lived in relation to someone, like the things where it's true that everybody in this project didn't have kids and maybe had some kind of property, really, like that could have been a thing, but like it just turned out that like none of us had kids, so we weren't in some kind of like ongoing co-parenting with X situation. And Elizabeth Freeman at that time was like, this doesn't even count. The real experience,
That's-
of course, is when you have to actually live on inside the break, like you have to actually like keep going, figure out how to relate to the person, all that stuff.
but aren't you still doing that even if you don't have kids? Like I'm
Right, that was we
it's
were a
not
little bit like,
legitimate.
no,
Yeah.
yeah, like we're doing that too, like, or whatever, you're having to figure that out, like.
Yeah.
But that was a little mini generational thing too, because
Yeah. Yeah.
of this sort of like what constitutes a true breakup or something, whatever. But it was
Yeah.
a funny little moment around the project. But
Yeah. It seems like there's a lot of generational issues and also a lot of this like heteronormative cultural ideas that are put on the way queer divorce works. And I know, like you were saying earlier, it does make sense that um, it's institutionalized now so that marriage is equal between a queer couple and a straight couple. I mean, there were queer couples that were married before. Don't tell the state, you
Right.
know, like that,
Right.
that was legit, but we were still queer people.
Yeah.
But it's so I'm hearing a lot of those like cultural practices put underneath what you're saying too, like having to get married um because you're more legitimized that way. I mean, I could feel that in my current relationship, I have a new partner. Will my family see me in the same way if I'm not married? Does
Totally.
there's also this idea that you brought up that seeing it as a fun thing. It's kind of like if you're queer and you're married, you're not like doing it legitimately. You're just like, it's just for fun. And it's just like, yeah, getting divorced is hilarious. Like it's not Will and Grace day to day. Like we're real people that are reckoning with this like
Right.
intense failure of relationship and grief.
Yeah.
On the other side, I think I get that a lot too from my family. Is like, because I was in a straight marriage before I came out, before I got divorced, that because I'm choosing queer divorce, because I'm choosing myself and coming out and doing this new relationship, that somehow I'm stronger and better at like at life. Like I don't need any help because I'm in this space where I know myself. Like whatever. Like it's all the same, right? Like this, you experience the same type of grief and
Yeah.
intensity and, like you said, reckoning
Yeah.
around your relationship separation. Yeah.
Totally.
Anyways, that was my little like soapbox. Like, I know what you're saying.
And I call some of that stuff like and I still experience this happening with friends, and it can really be like careful, or like I can like my little flags go up or something in a low-key way that I don't usually communicate. But like when somebody is relating to the institution of marriage, like sort of ironically or with some kind of like humorous distance or something, I get that's like a way of managing their own ambivalence about a relation. Like I read it as, like this
Mm-hmm.
sort of like, yeah, we're married. I don't know, but marriage is fake, whatever. It's like, sure, yeah, like it's an abstract state institution that isn't the actual inside of your relationship. But also, like you're entering into a like different category of citizenship and legal, like you're in, and like if you want to get out of it, you're gonna have to do a actually really hard thing that's actually expensive. Like it's so easy to get married, and it's actually the state makes it so hard to get divorced and like all this stuff. And so sometimes when somebody is like sort of being flip about their own ambivalence around it and being like, we're getting married, but like it's just a party or whatever, I can be a little bit like, are you okay? Like what do you want? Like where's the ground here? Like what do you
Mm-hmm.
need? Like do you really want to do that? Like, is this way to sort of deflect some like other kind of ambivalence or something inside
Mm-hmm.
this relationship, whatever? Like, so I like, yeah, I like talk about like, I like, yeah, like, that's like a thing I complain about is like when somebody like has some kind of weird, disavowed, ironic relationship to marriage itself. I'm like, no, no. No, like either do it or don't, like want it or not, because eventually, if you don't want it, you're really gonna have to like get
Yeah.
out of here, like so whatever. So that's
Yeah. It's a serious commitment no matter what. Legally, I mean, yeah,
yeah,
it's not easy. And then you're committing to each other, committing to this culture of being a gay couple who is married, and like all of these. We also have these other we're putting a lot of mountains on it
yeah,
too at the same time. Jeez.
yeah,
Oh.
totally.
So much getting married and divorced. Yikes. Okay. Anyways. Can you go back to, I'm just thinking about all the people you brought together to make the
Yeah,
music and the gay divorcees. Did you, as you were talking about divorce, like what are some of the major themes that came up and that you connected on as you created the music?
yeah. Well, I want to shout out the members of the band a little bit because it
Please.
did come out from like the like specificity of these people too. It like was like not, we tried to stay really close to like the concreteness of our stuff and our stories. And um so there were just want to make, yeah, okay. How many? I need to remember how to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9. Right, there were sort of like 9 of us gathered around this project, and all had, there was the Venn diagrams there was lots of sort of overlap and but then also really distinct things. And so we tried to like not come towards a unified experience of divorce, but like gather at what's shared, but also let it keep spreading out into specificity. And so the 9 people is Robbie Acklin, really amazing visual artist, photographer, and then also singer. This is what he's bringing to it. Lauren Baxt, who's a really wonderful writer and choreographer and dancer. Lauren Denizio, who is probably the is with me the person who is professionally a musician. Like Lauren has this amazing band project called The Worriers, who's it's a great sort of post-punk queer band. I'm bad at genre stuff. I don't know if they would be down with me saying post-punk, but whatever. Listen. And so Lauren was bringing a lot of I write songs already energy too, so it's really in that mode. And then Paul Legault is this amazing poet. Joshua Thomas Lieberman is a painter and video artist, so was doing that kind of stuff with us. And then Ita Segev is wonderful performance artist, writer. Julia Steinmetz, scholar, as well as performance artist, music maker. And Ashton Young, writer, tarot reader, mystic, queer mystic, and songwriter. And so it's the 9 of us gathering, and we had there's some of the themes that we've been talking about, we're emerging between us, it's some of this sort of reckoning with the speed of the US state's absorption of the possibility of queer marriage, being sort of whoa, these, some, living in a heteronormative world, our relationship to having an intimate partner felt sort of impossible in our childhoods or something. And then we had this experience of mainstream culture saying, yeah, go for it, and then doing it, but it being ambivalent, it being hard, we have some overlap around that experience of the sort of speed with which gay marriage was legalized or something, that kind of thing. And then other things were bringing to language abusive dynamics inside of queer relationships, and getting through some of the smokescreen of idealization of queerness, queer relationships being somehow better than, somehow more evolved than our straight relationships, because we're choosing it or whatever, or we don't need to deal with the baggage of heteronormativity, so we must not hurt each other in the same way or something. And there just being some very real across a lot of relationships, some really intense emotional abuse, physical abuse, that I think, not to speak for everyone, but I think not everybody had experiences of that within the group. That was some of the things that were only some people in that, but some difficulty bringing those experiences to language because of some desire to be in some kind of ideal image of queer intimacy or something. So that was a thread, and that was a thread that was really helpful for me to hear people about, because that was some of some of those structures or some of my experience. So hearing that, that was really powerful. And then I think big stuff around immigration and citizenship and state recognition and just sort of bureaucratic need for marriage, but then also how shitty it got to try to figure out for it, that kind of stuff. And then some just really big stuff around what does it mean to leave something, to leave. And that's part of it sort of became this bigger metaphor of how do you try to loosen yourself out of something that you don't want anymore? And like, you know, like, and how do we combat some sense of like not being able to leave any of the things we've gotten into, you know, and being like, maybe that's why I love divorcees so much, is that they like have a sense of like, we don't have to, you know, like yes, you know, we commit to things, but like also you get to like change
Mm-hmm.
and say no and get out, you know, like that, like there's this like fundamental, really sort of big investment in like, no, change is possible. Like you can get out of something that you don't want to be in anymore.
Yeah. You get to, divorce is a choice, but it's a choice that you're making outside of what's normal and okay. It's almost like, you know, coming out as a queer person. You know,
Yeah.
you're not choosing to be queer. You shouldn't have to choose, like the divorce shouldn't be this intense to choose, but you are having to choose yourself to be out, to be
Yeah.
open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. How did those conversations in that community change your perspective for yourself as you got divorced? Like, how have you um, evolved through that?
Well, I think there was like part of what was hard in the first moments of getting divorced for me was like encountering these narratives about like what an ideal divorce might look like or something, or like
Mm-hmm.
what a mature relationship to leaving someone is, you know, like sort of like the conscious uncoupling narratives or
Yeah.
something, and like some kind of like idealized image of myself as like being able to do that or something, like some like really abstract narrative about like what a good divorce was, becoming this like other level of punishing myself around it, you know,
Yeah.
other thing of like, oh well, I'm not like getting conscious uncoupled because like I right now like hate my ex and want nothing to do with him, and like am experiencing how he's like relating to me as like super shitty and violent, and like I just want to like cut off contact, you know, like, and need to cut off contact and need to like do that, you know, like, but then I had this like other shitty like level of like shame about that because there are these narratives about like what a mature divorce looked like or something,
Mm-hmm.
and my own desire to be the ideal version of it was also wrapped up in queerness and this like whatever, like all this stuff. um and so I had, by the time of doing this project, had already like combated a lot of that stuff. Like I like needed to like get on the other side of that, like no matter what, you know, like whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like that I had already sort of gotten there. But then the project and hearing people's stories and hearing, you know, like how the like actual stuff of divorce had worked for people, like really helped like ground some of that like critique of those ideal narratives. And like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we had to be with like the material reality of the dissolution of these relationships, you know, like there was no like, there is no like right way to do it, and in fact some of those narratives about the right way to do it are like super just like narratives of disavowal of like injury and pain.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
like the version of what conscious uncoupling is, you know, is like it imagines a relationship that like has, not always, you know, like a lot of them like have ways to like account for these things, but it imagines this thing that like is not injurious, you know, like it's just
Mm-hmm.
like we're okay, you know, like just gonna break up, you know, or something.
Yeah.
And like that, those weren't the conditions of any of our relationship, you know, like it was more complicated for everybody. And so that was really, you know, I had already moved through a lot of that, but it was really nice to like feel really like in community around that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because the reality is that we all manage grief differently.
Yeah.
Divorces is very hard. And some people may be able to consciously uncouple, but that takes a lot of energy from both parties to be in that space. So if somebody's having a harder time than somebody else, or their hard time looks different than the other person's hard time, it's impossible to actually consciously uncouple together. It has to go in waves. You know, you have to be very selfish too. That's something we've talked to quite a few podcast guests about, is like what it means to make that choice and be selfish, and how being selfish feels painful sometimes. It feels so painful. Yeah. Have you felt that?
Yeah, no, I had like a lot of especially, I mean, I was like sort of in getting out of this relationship, like disentangling from like some really intense codependent patterns where I was like, it was like impossible for inside the relationship for me to like, I mean, I was like doing sort of what might look like selfish shit. I was sort of like enacting like some like unconscious, like, you know, like doing stuff for myself within it.
Mm-hmm.
But like consciously and like in terms of what I could like articulate and in language like say to myself, it was like impossible for me to like differentiate my needs from already like sort of figuring out how to make it okay for my ex. You know, like there was just like
Yeah.
some real codependent shit in there. So the process like coming up to the edge of it and being like, oh no, I am out, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
was some really intense having to like be like, I get to do this. I don't have to like, cause yeah, like, and it that moment, like my partner, you know, inside that codependent dynamic, like denied my own need to leave the relationship. It was like, you
Mm-hmm.
can't, this is wrong, you're, you know, swayed by someone else, like couldn't see my agency inside of it, and like really intensely like denied my capacity to leave him, you know, like, and or my own desire to leave him, you know, like couldn't see it, even though it's so hard, you know, like whatever. I get why
Mm-hmm.
in ways, but it was really intense and sucked. And so it became really hard to like stay with that. Like, no, I get to do this, and it's not wrong to be done in this relationship, you know, like it's not, that's not a bad thing I'm doing necessarily, like fundamentally, you know, like, but it was really hard to feel that. So it did, yeah, it felt really selfish. I felt really like guilty at first. I had to really move through like all this like guilt, or that like also, you know, like my ex's narrative was that like I was doing this bad thing to us. I was doing everything, you know, like when in reality, like we had, you know, there's a whole structure of the relationship that
Mm-hmm.
we were both participating in, you know, so like
Yeah.
at first it was really hard for me to like differentiate from that and be like, it's not wrong, or like whatever. It's like that was the work immediately. And you know, I found loved ones who could do that with me and like show up and like see that, you know, I was, but it
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, it was hard.
That's messy and difficult. Do you think
Yeah.
now, you're 5 years out, you building your community more on divorce, that you feel more of a relief outside of that guilt and stress and
Oh,
shame
totally.
and all the things
Totally,
piled
totally.
up?
No, and that, and I like, I could get there, you know, like it was within that sort of, you know, those first, that was just like the work immediately. But like, yeah, no, I like feel, yeah, I feel, yeah, like very relieved
Yes.
in general. And yeah, and like down, and it's great, and I don't feel guilt about it, and like fuck all that, you know,
Yeah.
like, you know, really very clearly in that. And you know, like,
Mhm.
I mean, shout out to my therapist, shout out to loved ones, shout out, you know, like for in the immediate thing. And, you know, this project then like did this whole other layer of it that was so beautiful, but like in those like first, you know, in the thick
Yeah.
of like that, like
Hmm.
really leaned on people for support inside that to help find that sense.
Yeah. And you need to do the work to get through it, because it's hard and it could overtake you. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, leaning on your community and your space to become anew is so important. And I
Totally.
like that, every time I talk to a divorcee, they're like, 3 to 5 years out, I feel so much better. I'm like, beyond it. I'm like, there's hope for us all. It's hard.
Totally.
Hmm. Um, I think you've already shared a little bit about the different portions of the music that came out in your pieces and the different experiences that everybody's had. And you're talking a little bit about some of your connection with it already. But I'm wondering, is there, one piece in there, one song within the music that you felt more connected to, or that that felt, um, more personal to you than others?
Hmm. Well, there's yeah, we like shared, so for all the songs, one person was sort of lead on it, you know, like came with lyrics, came with something, and then but we like also shared authorship and sort of made things together. I think the like this song that like, so yeah, so this album was like shared initially over a toll-free number, and we got a billboard on, you know, on Atlantic Avenue here in New York, and then put it online to like call in, and it was like a telephonic performance. You could like call in and listen. And the like song that became the sort of jingle for the telephone, that also then on the like now how it lives online is the first and last song that you can listen to, is this kind of refrain that I wrote really early on in the project. And it's this sort of like, you know, this sort of like self-soothing refrain that was just like, you can leave what isn't, the language is just, you can leave what isn't working. You can, oh my God, I'm forgetting it because it's been some years. You can leave what isn't working. You can leave what you don't think you can. You know, like, so that's, and it's just that language.
Yes.
You don't leave what isn't working. You don't leave what you can think you can. You can leave what, you can leave what isn't working, but you don't think you can.
Yeah.
You know, like this sort of, and so that for me was this like, just like, it's like the self-soothing mantra or something I needed. And that's ever, so it's like something I sort of like retroactively gave myself
Yeah.
for the
Permission.
yeah, that permission. So
Oh
like,
yeah.
so that one is really, yeah, that one's like powerful for me. But then I love them all, and they're all really different and like have different sort of emotional tonalities, but then also musical genres. That was something we wanted to do, was like each like play with some kind of musical genre in the pieces we were doing, you know, like find a little like, yeah, be in, there's like a sort of dance track, there's like a like EDM-y like, or like housey like dance track, there's like a country song, there's like a weirder sort of soundscape with spoken stuff song, there's like a real sort of like Carly Rae Jepsen-esque pop song, you know, like there's a sort of like electronic Robin song, you know, like there's like, we wanted to like play with all these different genres to like, you know, do those like, you know, like excavate some of these feelings.
So if people want to listen to the full album, they can go to divorcee.gay. Is that
Yes. Yes,
the
divorcee, the like the sort of classy, you know, like 2 E's, divorcee.gay. That came about was like, because I didn't know you could like, it, not everything had to be .com and .org, and you could just do whatever. And I was like, oh my God, divorcee.gay, you know,
I have to,
yeah,
yeah.
the project was like, you know, using, there's the you know, film from the 30s, The Gay Divorcees, or The Gay Divorce. The Gay Divorce? What is it? Yeah, The Gay Divorce, whatever. I Google it, everybody. But there's that film. And so it was like playing with that, you know, now it's like, that was about like sort of straight couples getting happily divorced. And now here we were, like queer couples, like in the mess of divorce, you know, so like the gay divorcees, you know, so yeah, the website is divorcee.gay.
So go there if you want to hear the full album. I'm wondering too about the toll-free number and the community's reaction. What was the reaction to some of the music? What is some of the things you heard? How do people feel about it?
Well, on the number, you could call in to listen, but you could, then there was an option to leave us a message. You could leave a voicemail for us. And yeah, we got like probably like I think like 250 voicemails. It was up for like a couple weeks, and they were from all over, and it was cool. It was like, I mean, it was a range. It was people being like, thank you, or like whatever. And then there was like a bunch of like recent divorcees, like just like talking to us about their experiences, you know, doing this sort of one-way conversation about their experiences, or in a kind of like sort of like weird anonymous confessional booth thing, you know, because like we didn't know who they were. They didn't have to introduce themselves. They could just like say where they were at. So yeah, there are these beautiful messages that we have recordings that you know, maybe someday we'll use them for something. But yeah, a lot of like this like, yeah, I think the sort of general thing was like, you know, getting out of an intimate entanglement and can feel really lonely. So like a sort of sense of like, it was cool to like be inside a song that felt shared or something. You know?
Yeah, there's not a lot of mainstream music about divorce. There's this fiery breakups. There's the
right. Yeah, and what's the sort of, yeah, like, yeah, totally.
We've talked a lot about community and the connection to art. I love that you were able to find community through art in this space. We need more, more connection like that with people, and being able to express yourselves through a shared art genre is really amazing. And that's why I wanted to have you on. And I'm glad that you've shared more of your story and talked about, the difference between how you feel about gay divorce. And I think we're in this like really prominent time, like you're saying, of queer divorces. I mean, queer people are under fire across the country for a lot of different reasons, but there's many people that are married. There's many people that are coming out more at these exceptional levels, more people at like in the stage that I was in, that were in a heteronormative marriage and are now out queerly. So I'm appreciate that we're continuing to have this conversations and more art about it. And appreciate you sharing that. Could you share one more thing before I let you go? Is, as you think about it, what do you think is the most important thing for our listeners, somebody who's thinking about divorce or going through divorce, to keep in mind as they're going through their own divorce possibly, or rebuilding after it?
I don't know. I think like I come back to sort of, pretty sort of like oft said banal things that people say in a moment like this, is that like time changes everything or something, or whatever.
Yeah.
Or recovery is possible, or, like you will heal or whatever, like some stuff. But I think there is some just real fundamental thing. Or I think, it's maybe my phrase, like, you can leave what isn't working, you can leave what you don't think you can. Plus, like everything changes. So like all the things you're feeling right now will transform in some moment, or like all the conditions you're in, like transformation is possible. And so even the like really hard parts of this, or the sort of materially overwhelming parts of this, like if you have a glimmer of the possibility of something like feeling more aligned with your flourishing, like that transformation is like, that can all happen. It maybe is like messy and slow, but like that, like those rearrangements of the very fundamental parts of your life like are possible. And that will actually like will open on to, like not in some like rose color, like in some like panacea-y, like just like, and then your life gets better or something. But you can actually like address some of the like most fundamental things about your life and shift them, and find new ways of being, and find new relationships. And transformation happens.
Yeah, transformation happens. It's actually one of the only inevitable things in our lives: inconsistency, growth, transformation, change. It's very true. So true. Thank you for sharing that with me, and for sharing your music with us. I can put links up on the website of divorcee.gay.com. No, not .com. Divorcee.gay.
Just gay.
No
Just
.com.
gay.
Just gay.
Yeah.
And also, if people want to reach out and find you, at ethanphilbrick.com.
Yep.
And also on Instagram as well.
Totally.
I'll put that on there.
Totally cool.
All right. Thank you so much for being with me today. I appreciate you.
Yeah, please. So nice to meet you, and so glad you're doing this. Yeah.